You're being recorded.
I'm now recorded. No problem.
Um,
Okay.
So, Andy, welcome. I'm so privileged to have you as someone that I can interview. As you know, I found your life journey very inspiring, and the reason for me saying, come onto my channel, let me interview you, is because I believe that your story, as insignificant as it might feel to you, is significant to someone else out there who is going through challenges, and I think you're one of those people that are truly inspiring. So let me just read what I wrote here about you because then I can just honor you properly. So, Andy is a qualified life and executive coach with a remarkable journey that spans over 27 years in the healthcare industry. But his story is much more than a career in business. Andy transitioned from a career in IT to digital dentistry. Back in the day, even digital dentistry, that's amazing in itself, Andy. Eventually becoming the general manager for Dentsply, Sirona, South Africa. Over 17 years, he expanded the business across South and Sub-Saharan Africa, achieving a tenfold increase in revenue under his visionary leadership. Despite facing personal trials, such as caring for his ill wife, Andy's faith and resilience has been unwavering. Andy likens his journey to that of a ship's captain, and I love this, navigating through storms and calm waters, always moving forward with mindfulness and a belief that endings are the start of new beginnings. Andy's coaching business, which he has named the Pathfinder, reflects this philosophy. Join us as we explore Andy's exciting life, his achievements, and his coaching journey. Okay, Andy, there's the formalities. Let me
Thank
just
you,
have a sip of
Tracy.
my water. I didn't realize how
For the,
nervous I'd be doing this.
thank you for that introduction and for the viewers watching us.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Um, so Andy, let's start because I just want to take us through this journey of your life, which, like I said, I believe will inspire many. So just looking at your early years and background, can you tell me about your childhood and where you grew up?
Not a lot, but just that the fact that I grew up in a Cypriot family who left Cyprus after World War II and immigrated to Egypt, of all places, to live in a place called Alexandria to have a better life. And to find not too soon afterwards with Nasser there that they basically had to get out of there as well because of a political upheaval, economic upheaval as well, where they were nationalizing foreign-owned businesses. And they came to Zimbabwe, believe it or not. Well, they wanted to come to South Africa first of all, but they came to Zimbabwe and basically settled there. And I was born in Zimbabwe in Harare, formerly known as Salisbury back then. And I grew up basically in a very entrepreneurial family. Hardworking people who really worked hard and taught me the value of hard work. And even, I suppose, that's kind of where my DNA comes from. Basically, entrepreneurial business mindset, having been exposed to that at a very young age through my family. My family came before me. They really had settled in Zimbabwe,
Okay.
and my grandfather wanted to do farming but couldn't. And basically,
Mm.
short story being that my father basically ended up in the textile industry. He actually ended up building a factory providing high volume clothing to like
Wow.
for school kids and that kind of thing, farm workers, laborers, etc. That sort of thing. Where very much a volume driven business, but a hard business. I mean, factories, and he survived a lot because basically he managed to stay debt free, where a lot of factories didn't, and a lot of factories that
Yeah.
went into debt actually disappeared with the
It's amazing.
emergence of Chinese cheap imports in the
Mm.
clothing industry. It basically just killed just about all the clothing businesses. Yeah.
Andy, that's a trend that I'm starting to see in South Africa at the moment as well, which is a recent thing. And it's interesting that that happened. Not, I say recent, but I think it happened after. Zimbabwe, at least, I don't think it was always as much of a challenge as it is now. Just interesting that you said that, something I've noticed as well. Okay.
I think so. I mean, I think China has definitely expanded its footprint throughout Africa, and their imports. It's very difficult to compete with the imports, and I think debt makes just loads that business with that extra burden where you just really have to be careful. I think the only way one of the methods to compete would be to be as debt free as possible, if that were possible in a business. Yeah,
And even in one's personal life too, it does help, eh?
I think so. Right now.
So, Andy, what were some of the key influences or events from your early years that shaped you?
My father was a disciplinarian, and unfortunately a cruel disciplinarian, and that had quite an impact on me as a youngster growing up. He also was a very hardworking man, and we had the army. We had a national service campaign up in Zimbabwe, and he had to go to many army camps. And with army camps and business, he was hardly at home. A lot of times away, but he was either working hard or away.
Mm.
Um, it forced me to grow up quite quickly. School was also difficult for me those early years as well.
Mm.
Um, the whole thing about being bullied and having to deal with all that, and learning to defend yourself. Just you grow up very fast,
Mm.
and that's kind of where my leadership beginnings started. I would say, in terms of, I was kind of forced to be responsible from a very young age, um,
Mm.
and that was really quite an impact on me, I would say.
Okay. Andy, when you say you were forced to be responsible, I mean, I feel like you've kind of given us just the tip of the iceberg. Was there anything specific or more? What was the deeper challenges in terms of getting to that point where you had to take?
It's just that, for example, if you are being bullied, I mean, who's going to rescue you? And
Yeah.
it's that kind of thing, and having to eventually stand up to a bully was not easy. That's a lesson I had to learn quite early in life, and
Mm.
um, and deal with it. And
Mm.
yeah, and I got into trouble in school, believe it or not, for doing that, just standing up for myself.
Mm. Yourself.
So, even though the bully got away with it, for many
Mm.
years,
Mm.
that kind of thing. And yeah, I
Mm.
think also just from the not having a father present many times,
Mm.
just the
Mm.
weight of being the eldest son, and just that responsibility on myself.
Mm.
My parents didn't have a great marriage as well. That was also quite problematic. Um, and yeah, I remember my mom leaving home for a short period of time, and we basically, I mean, I was almost like kind of taking care of her, which was crazy. Here I'm a young adolescent, not even 11 years old. I mean, so that
Mm.
that doesn't make any sense. So yeah,
No.
but that kind of taught me the yeah, being a leader, sort of taking over, and I started to find that that trend started to move through a lot of my life as I grew up.
Mm.
In my high school years,
Mm.
even in the military service,
Mm.
and so on in business, as we'll go into later. But um, yeah, this whole leadership thing and moving into leadership sort of became a trend in my life.
Awesome, Mandy. Something that I just crossed my mind now is, again, you're bringing up a lot of themes in the world. And I think, I
Mhm.
mean, recently some expose that's been happening with regards to Hollywood and
Mhm.
stuff that has gone down with innocent people and children and how they were bullied as well, and also didn't have a voice. So I guess what I'm trying to ask you is what what advice would you give to someone now that is in the position of being bullied? You stood up, you still got into trouble, but that stood you in good stead, that lesson going forward. I'm just wondering if you have any advice.
I think find help,
Mm.
and find help from an adult that you can trust, because I think
Mm.
that's the other side of it. Because I think a lot of times parents dismiss it.
Mm.
Um, and I know that when I did mention it to my own parents, they weren't that supportive about it. They
Mm.
kind of dismissed it. You'll get over it. But I think it should be taken seriously by parents. And I think,
Mm.
and if it's happening in a school environment, I would involve the school administration in a way that it's dealt with. I
Mm,
wouldn't leave it alone because I think if it is left alone, it can have quite bad consequences psychologically
mm,
for young adults growing up.
mm. And I think it also talks to resilience, where some people we develop different coping mechanisms, and that's a story for another day, I suppose. But some people
Yeah,
are broken by something like that, and that's not
very
what you
much so.
want. And other people learn
Yeah,
from that and how to evolve and use it as a lesson
yeah.
going forward and develop that sort of strength, that inner strength to I suppose I don't want to use the word fight it, but to counter it going forward. Mm. Okay.
I would say in my case also my faith played a role, even though at a
Mm.
young age. But also,
Mm.
I remember watching a movie with my grandparents called The Ten Commandments.
Mm.
Um, had such an impact on me, and that kind of also sort of set me up for the beginning of a journey of faith, if I can call it that,
Wow.
which also played a role even in that situation, with the loneliness and having to
Mm.
find a voice. You know,
Mm.
I would find that even in times of prayer and quietness, that
Mm.
strength I would find inner strength from that, if I can call it that. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I think faith does play a big role, eh? Andy, just in terms of now moving on to your education, which obviously will lead into the career aspect of your journey, how did you
Mm.
decide on your educational path, and what were some challenges you faced?
So in high school, I did a lot better. I mean, I really excelled very well. I got academic colors. I got university entrance. I wanted to become a doctor. That was my goal in life, to become a heart surgeon. I really loved that whole idea of going there. Um, Unfortunately, or fortunately, I met a young woman, and we fell in love. And basically, as I finished school and went to military service, we got married. And my father was very against the marriage, really, really against it. And the consequence of that was I had a choice. I had a choice of either being married
Hmm.
or saying no to marriage, and I could go to university. But if I chose to be married, my father said, you're not going to university.
Oh.
So that was really a very difficult choice for me.
Mm.
Um, I basically made the decision to continue. I remained married, had a young family, and
Mm.
basically entered the brutal world of having to learn to provide very quickly
Mm.
um, for
Mm.
oneself. And that also, I suppose, another lesson in sort of stepping
Mm.
up and having to
Mm.
to lead and be responsible, um,
Mm.
and have to provide for a young family.
Mm.
Having done military service, I think about the salary we used to earn in those days and how we lived, but we survived,
Yeah.
strangely. And years later, I started doing correspondence courses with UNISA, and I started getting involved in some business studies, and and I was also engaged with a company called ICL.
Okay.
Maybe not known by many of the people today, but in those days was quite a force in the mainframe area. And basically, I learned about computer engineering, and I
Mm.
started a career basically almost as an apprentice, if I can call it that,
Mm.
and learned the whole skill of being a computer engineer. And I entered into the whole new world of the digital environment,
Yes.
um, and yeah, and that got me going on a journey where I basically then went into business for
Yeah.
myself. Um,
And you just in terms of
but
the IT side of things, sorry to interject for us a second. Um, I would love you to share, if you're comfortable with it, what the time period was when you did that, because you were doing
okay,
things ahead of your time. So perhaps the heart surgeon thing and your ability to see ahead was part of that.
maybe it was. I think if I look back IT in those days, I mean, we used to talk about a memory on a computer, and it was a big board, really a bigger than twice the size of a shoebox, and basically
Mm.
it only had like 8 megs, and that was sort of massive, and hard drives that were like the size of record players, and
Mm.
but that was the beginning of my journey into IT. I mean, I started to a world of possibilities, I suppose, opened up, seeing businesses networked. And I think that also sort of set me up for my career in the digital side of dentistry, because basically I
Mm,
had an understanding or a foundation, particularly in the space of IT and what the digital side
mm,
of technology offered to healthcare.
mm.
Um, and I think there were massive opportunities that came from that. And I think there's still many, many more things to happen because of that technology.
Absolutely. It's just incredible. So um I think,
And just
yeah.
sorry, and one other thing as well, just to digress from, that eventually, from an education point of view, I also did an MBA eventually.
Mm,
That culminated in an MBA in my later years of life. Um, so the interesting is I had a lot of business experience, and I find doing the MBA was kind of like a well-rounding mechanism, which just helped me become a lot more strategic thinking
mm,
in leadership, and also think more about the leading of a business,
mm,
because there's a huge people element in the business that
mm,
people forget about.
mm,
Um, and eventually, I went to do coach training as well with
mm.
the Centre for Coaching in Cape Town, and became a professional coach as well. So that's kind of been my education
Where
journey.
you at now at the moment, right?
Where right
With
now.
years
Yes.
of wisdom. And when I met you, I'm like, you've got so much to offer in the coaching space. So seriously, I'm just putting it out there. If you need a coach, I'm not punting you for any other reason other than you can really make a difference from the business perspective and also from your own personal journey, family, all that stuff as well. Um, Andy, there's something else I wanted to ask you. I mean, oh, the other thing in terms of an MBA, people will throw that word out there, and I think these days with the way um, sort of technology is shifting, a lot of people are doing short courses, moving into a space where they're evolving in that space, doing another short course. Whereas an MBA, I mean, if you can just explain I almost want to say trauma, because I've walked alongside a friend, a colleague of mine in corporate who did an MBA, and I was subsequently offered to go through that process, and I was like, the stage of the life I'm in right now, I don't think I can cope. But it's a really intense um degree, right?
It is intense, and I do advise that if you are going to do it, I think do it if you're in a stable working environment, because I
Mm,
think if you do change careers mid-course,
yeah.
I've seen many MBAs just the guys just stop. Their careers just are too demanding.
Yeah.
So you really need to be, how can I say, you need a good 3 years of stability just to finish your
Mm,
MBA, because it is very demanding. I
mm.
think it's also called the divorce degree,
Yeah,
because
I've
it
heard
it
that too.
really, really, it really pushes your boundaries in terms of hours, and just the time required to complete assignments. But I don't regret it. I would advise
That's
anybody who's
amazing.
contemplating leadership seriously in a corporate
Mm,
environment or in a business environment to do it. I
mm,
think it's a worthwhile experience. I think the learnings that you will learn from strategy, and
100%.
leading,
Mm,
and how to use technology, and even um, just set your business up in a more strategic way and give it
mm,
direction. I think there's a lot of value for an MBA
mm,
still out there. And all these short courses are great. I think they give you a flavor of it.
mm.
But at the end of the day, I think what you want to do is build competence,
Yeah.
and it's being able to, because I find what happens a lot of MBAs, there's a lot of wonderful business plans that come out, and you can see these documents and folders. Fantastic. They're
Hands-on
so,
experience, literally.
yeah. But
Yeah.
can you now implement it? It's the
Yeah.
implementation
That-
of that actual of that plan, and that's really, I think that's the test of an MBA. Actually
mm,
implementing and getting it to actually happen. Yeah, that's much more challenging.
mm. And usually the idea is to do it. Sorry to digress onto this topic, but usually the idea is to, not that we're digressing it as part of your journey, but usually the idea is to take what you've learned on the MBA and implement that in the business setting that you're in. Did that benefit? Because you've been
Yeah.
hugely successful in your career. And like I said in the introduction, you grew a business hugely over a period of time. Um, and yeah, did the MBA, was that part of your
I
journey
would
in
say
terms of that?
very much part of my early journey,
Okay.
particularly in understanding how technology. could be a strategy for
Mm,
growth and even for transformation.
mm,
Um, I got involved as I sold my business. I was in a private business, and I basically sold that and basically came to Johannesburg. And when I came to Johannesburg, I basically got exposed to the healthcare industry. And that's when I got involved with my MBA, and my
mm,
IT side took me into the digital side of healthcare.
mm,
And I saw this technology, which basically, there was a huge organization called Siemens. We all know Siemens.
mhm,
And Siemens decided to get out of the dental healthcare space. And they exited it.
mhm,
And this opportunity came up, and I just happened to be in the right place, doing an MBA, right place, right time, and I got involved. They asked me to get involved with a particular piece of technology called CEREC, which in those days was very pioneering. If you think about
mhm.
it's 30 years ago or
Mm,
27 years ago,
amazing,
um,
Andy.
using a camera the size of like a pen that you write on a whiteboard,
Hmm.
a little bit bigger than that, taking photos of a person's tooth in their mouth, and basically taking a block. I've got a little block over here, a little block of porcelain,
Yes,
um, putting that in a machine and milling out for you a
a
crown
tooth.
in 90 minutes, and you basically would not have to come back
Amazing.
as a patient. The
Mm,
doctor offered you something that was far superior
mm,
in terms of its longevity, and it made such a difference to patients and to doctors.
mm.
So I got involved in the very early stages, and the technology just took off. I mean, it took off
Amazing.
with various different evolutions and new versions. But it took off and it's now a very large. I basically left Deaths by Sirona with a very large footprint established in South Africa of this technology amongst dentists and universities and institutions, and even through sub-Saharan Africa. There's quite a few
Mm.
um, countries that actually have this technology today.
It's
Um,
incredible.
and
Sure.
that was, but that was life changing and transforming, I think, for the industry, and to be there
Mm,
at the right time and to ride that wave. And I think the NBA definitely played a role in that.
mm,
And I suppose my roots, the roots of of doing that IT
mm,
apprenticeship and going through that whole experience of years of it,
mm,
um, forsaking the heart surgery, but yet coming back to healthcare in a different way,
100%.
and being involved and contributing to the lives of patients through doctors and through technology. Yeah.
And we take for granted sometimes that we have a teeth and we can smile. Because I listened to, I think it's called Angel Wings or something on one of the radio stations. It might have been Jacaranda. There was this lady who had a gum disease where she had lost her teeth and she hadn't smiled for years. And they
Yeah.
helped her, gave her smile back. And she says all she does now, she just looks at people and she says her whole life is filled with sunshine. She says you can't believe how smiling actually does impact your emotional, how you're feeling. So, and other
It's
people, if you smile at them, they immediately receive that happy energy. So,
The
yeah.
same happened with Japanese ladies. There was a whole study done while, Japanese ladies would often talk and they would put a hand in front of their mouth when they talk to
Yes.
you, and it's because they didn't want to show you their teeth due
Sure.
to the shame of the condition of their teeth.
Shame. Yeah.
And this technology was, embraced by them, and how it changed. And you'd see
Yeah.
people transform. You see lives, and and yeah, I don't think you can underestimate the power of a smile.
Yeah.
And also all the disease. So many diseases come through the mouth. We don't realize that. And your joint here, your TMJ,
Mm.
huge impact
Mm.
on your life with headaches and migraines, and how we grind our teeth because of stress and all that.
Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and our oral care is linked to your heart. There's a heart disease, and there's a link there with that as well. So,
Yes.
so yeah, really an interesting industry. Um, and
Sure.
an industry that was very, how can I say, staid.
Mm.
Not much had changed. It was very hands-on, doing a lot of things mechanically and old way. And it's only, I would say, in these last 10 years, it's just transforming. And so many
Incredible.
competitors are now on board,
Mm.
where Siemens used to be the only founder. Now there are many,
Mm.
many competitors in that space, um, and it's changing dramatically. And I think it will continue to change.
And just a testament to you mentioned right at the beginning that you come from an entrepreneurial family, and to be an entrepreneur requires that pioneering spirit. So I think you pioneered a lot. Well, in that space during those years, and we now reaping the benefit of someone who was willing to go into Africa, take the technology, fight for it. So I use the word fight a
And
lot,
I,
but you know what I mean.
but I agree with you. I do agree with you because it
Yeah.
was when I remember back when I got involved with it, people were very skeptical.
Yeah.
A lot of competitors were wondering if I was mad to get involved in something like that. But
Yeah.
I don't regret it.
Mm,
And yes, it was challenging, and just to change mindsets and to get people
mm,
to accept the technology.
mm.
Um, because it involves changing the way you operate as a doctor, and even as a lab person involved with a doctor. All those
Yeah.
has a knock-on effect. But it took off. It just takes years, and I think that it's not giving up. I suppose my faith is playing a role in that hugely as
Mm,
well, just to
mm,
continue.
mm,
Um, yep. And the economy, was very challenging at
mm.
times. You had inflation, you had exchange rates going crazy because the stuff's not made yet, it's imported, and being able to be resilient
Navigating through that, yeah.
and to continue, yeah,
Mm,
and
mm.
grow the business. But it grew from a few members to an operation that basically was around a national operation, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Amazing.
and had a footprint in Africa.
And Andy, that just speaks to as well your leadership abilities, because I'm sure in doing that, I'm not sure I'm almost 100% convinced, you had teams that grew and developed under you. So what would you say was one of the biggest lessons you learned in terms of the team dynamic and leading teams?
But I feel you can have the best strategy, do what you want. You can't do much without hands and feet,
Mm,
and your hands and feet is your team members, the structure there and how it's placed into the marketplace. That's hugely important. And I'm very grateful. I'll always be grateful for them because they really helped put the company on the map.
mm,
And many doctors who basically supported, as well as universities who got
mm,
behind it as well. Um, yeah, so the success was really on the shoulders of a very strong team,
mm,
who really who
mm,
worked hard at it. And it was an honor to work with them, just to mentor them as well.
mm.
I got a lot of pleasure from that, just the mentoring side, helping them develop as leaders in their own divisions, um, and to the point where some of them are now running the company. Yeah. So,
It's incredible,
yeah.
sure. And I loved how you mentioned your customers as well, because the doctors came into that whole, when you're leading, you're
Yeah.
not just leading internally, it's beyond that as well. It's the collective,
You got to lead. Yeah.
including the person receiving the the treatment, I suppose. The next thing I'd like to really just look at is your relationships and support systems through the years. So you've mentioned a few people, but I don't think you've gone into a lot of detail. So who have been the most influential people in your life, and how have they impacted you?
If I look back on my life, my grandfather was quite influential on my life as a youngster.
Mhm.
Um, just the fact that yeah, I didn't get much support from my parents in terms of listening to me. My grandfather was the guy who would be the listener, the guy who really listened deeply. If I can call that in coaching, he
Wow.
was the deep listener,
Mhm.
and he really, yeah, I missed him when he went. And so he was really important in my life. And the other strange person back in Zimbabwe in those days, we used to have domestics which used to help my mom cook. And my Our domestic was really very good to me as well, and that's another strange relationship. Who basically just yeah, it was almost like a surrogate father to me, if I can call it that. Very strange as that might be. Um,
It's not
and
strange,
then
Andy.
growing up,
It's life.
um, it is life. Yeah, it is
Mm,
life. And then I think just having left home and started in business. Sorry, before I get there, I think just also in school, I had two people which were very influential in my life. I remember their names, Mr. Jackson, who's passed away, I'm sure, and Mrs. Robinson. Um, Very instrumental in terms of getting me on track with maths and the sciences. Really, really had a lot of confidence, got me right, and I excelled. I excelled because of them. I did extremely well.
Amazing.
They
Hey.
made me believe in myself, and I did really well because of them. Um, and then, strange enough, my mother-in-law from my first marriage had this wonderful expression about life. You know, life happens to us, but it's what
Mm,
we do with what happened. You know, and that always stuck with me most of my life. I know Viktor Frankl's got a similar expression about it. You know, it's not just the circumstances, but our decisions about the circumstances, what we decide to do, um, that impact how it's going to affect our lives.
mm,
And that really, yeah, made a profound effect on my life going forward. I think just
mm,
um, career-wise, setting me up for resilience, just yeah, persevering.
mm,
Because there were times I remember going through early 90s when I was actually in business for myself, had my own business,
mm,
and the Gulf War broke out. Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. I think we all remember that. Some of us
mm.
were younger in those days, but
Yeah.
basically he caused devastation. I mean,
Mm,
oil prices shot to the roof.
mm,
World economy had tremendous challenges. I remember in South Africa, you know, a lot of business was, especially capex, capital-related businesses or
mm.
transactions, were impacted,
Good.
and customers just buying the necessities. And I had to go and see the bank manager, and I had an auditor with me who was quite an amazing person who he joined me on the call to the auditors to the banker's office. We were looking for more cash for our business, or just a cash flow
Yeah.
to manage our cash flow through that difficult patch. And the banker was not deeply listening. The bank manager was answering the phone. He was letting people walk into his office, and he was saying yes or no. Yeah, you can. And here I am trying to appeal. Please listen to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And eventually, my auditor got up. He put his phone, took the bank manager, put it off the hook, and closed the bank manager's door. Said, "Oh, please listen." And I learned a lesson about. My auditor was a wonderful person. Just really, he helped me a lot. And just yeah, that lesson about customer service
Mm.
and the importance of just deep listening. You
Listening.
know, the bank manager wasn't doing that.
Mm.
Um, he wasn't really listening, and just and that yeah. Also, I, I've learned to listen to customers. I think that's just really very important from that lesson there.
We
And
are breaking up a bit,
yeah,
Andy.
okay. Any better now?
It's not your fault. It's on my side. It says my internet connection is unstable. I'm
Is
trying.
that better?
It should get better. We're just going to keep you are freezing
Okay.
in between. Um, so we may as
Let's
well.
let's let's pause a bit and then just wait for it to come back.
Well, no one's listening to each other now, thanks to technology. Can you hear me?
Technology's failing. Okay.
It
I,
is
I can hear you,
failing.
but now you're moving. Okay, now I can see you.
Am I
Okay.
moving?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And I think there's nothing worse than being unheard. And and I think just as a leader, my advice to a leader, if you are going to talk with a colleague or a team member,
Yeah.
is just make sure you give them the space, you know,
Mm,
and that you can focus and can give them your undivided attention, because I think
mm,
that's a crucial part of leadership that goes missing. I mean, Daniel Goleman, who's an authority on emotional intelligence, talks about how important it is.
mm,
It's really important in
mm,
leadership. Um,
mm,
we've got two ears and one mouth, so we should listen twice as hard. Um, and really, it's really important. So
mm,
I think it's been important in my journey. It's been a contributing factor with customers and being successful with customers, and
mhm,
also with staff, and having a team that was highly engaged,
mhm.
you know, under my leadership. Yeah,
Which is amazing, Andy. I agree with you that just being heard and someone to listen to you makes a huge difference, but also being seen, right? So we also have two
the other thing.
arms and one mouth. And we
Yeah,
sometimes miss cues when people are reaching out. I suppose I'm also talking about intuition coming into that, where you're seeing, you're hearing, but what are you seeing and hearing, right? So that's also
yeah,
a part of it because we often see and
mm,
hear through our own lenses as opposed to perhaps there's something more
mm,
going on here. And I think when
yeah,
you mentioned being listened to, you've also been heard, well, heard, seen, um, and given the opportunity and your frustration, because I can imagine you going into the banking scenario where you were needing that support, you felt completely unseen, unheard. You were just another number coming through the door. Um, yeah.
Very much so, Trudy.
So,
Absolutely. And that was a horrible experience. It wasn't a good experience. I mean, it stuck with me all these years, but
yeah.
it's also stuck with me as a, how can I say, it's almost like a test case, because it's almost like a textbook case where you'd say there's a lot of lessons in that.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
very much about all the things that we're talking about, being seen, being
mm,
heard, customer service,
mm,
yeah, just all those things,
mm. No,
and
100%.
very relatable to a business and even to private life.
100%.
Yeah,
Hmm. And being on different wavelengths, So, one of the things I've noticed with social media is the rise of bullying, because it's almost safe to do it behind a screen when you can't see the person, although it was very rough back in the day too, face to face as well. Um, I think what I'm trying to say is that if you actually see the impact, that if you were intuitive enough to see what that is doing to the person on the receiving end, you might think about it not twice, might not even do it, consider doing it. So yeah, there's a lot of lessons to be learned in listening and
I
being
have to agree. And
present.
I think being present, I think that whole thing with Dr. Goldman has got a wonderful a grid 4x4 where he talks about
Mm,
emotional intelligence and
yeah.
your own emotions and then basically being aware of yourself, then aware
Mm,
of others and aware
mm,
of their feelings and managing them. Um,
mm,
so just all those, there's so much to be
mm.
said for that,
100%.
um, and about relationships
Mm,
and yeah, they could be more successful, much more meaningful if we just
mm,
listened a lot more
mm,
and saw, like you
mm,
said. And I think there's also a lot to be said for us as leaders to be intuitive, to
mm,
listen to your intuition.
mm,
There have been times in my life when I have not listened to my intuition,
mm,
and I've paid for it.
mm,
So it's important to listen to your intuition and to be in tune with it as well.
mm. And it's interesting that you said that, because I'm just recollecting, and it's not about me, but I think we speaking to a collective as well. Um,
Yes.
there's sometimes moments in your own life where you're going through stuff, right? And you might miss stuff with
Mm.
your own intuition because you're needing someone to see you in that moment when you're not okay. And there's grace for that. And I've learned that in my own journey as well, to have grace for myself, that when I haven't been okay and haven't responded the way I would have liked to, and I know better, that in that moment I wasn't okay. If that makes sense. So just, yeah. And it's okay not to be okay as long as you can recognize that and move forward, I suppose.
And that's a wonderful lesson because it is okay to not be okay and,
Yeah.
and to work through that. I agree with you.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And to
And
have wonderful people in your life that see you like your domestic, who you
mm,
said that's strange. Um, I think a lot of people can resonate with that, to be honest, because someone was listening to you and you felt welcomed in the presence of that person. So, Andy, how do you maintain your relationships? And well, how did you? Actually, you still do, because there's a lot of challenges you're going through that I'm on the surface level aware of, even though I know how challenging they are. How do you
yeah.
maintain your relationships and balance your personal and your professional life?
So I think just for context, so our audience understands what we're
Yeah.
saying. I mean, my wife has been very ill for many years,
Mm,
um, having been a professional who left her profession due to severe illness,
mm,
basically had to cope with that. And that has an impact on one where you see your partner suffering and going through a long period of trial.
mm,
And and having to run a business at the same time and be there and be present and to be
mm,
mindful that you've got
mm,
you've got a responsibility is can be challenging. So for me, just in terms of relationships, it's to try and be present for my wife, um, and it's bringing listening into that as well.
Mm,
Really listening, seeing, and being heard.
mm,
Um, and I think just spending time with people, it's
mm,
whether it's with a customer, um, going beyond, going a little deeper than just okay, he has an order, and just pay attention to your customers, listen to them,
mm.
observe. Sometimes you'll be aware that there are things going on in their lives that are also challenging,
Yeah.
um, and and be a human to another human. I think just it's
Mm.
important. Yeah.
Andy, have you ever found in your career you've walked into a scenario when you can immediately feel something's off?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of what you
Yeah.
say, like you can go in and you can see, okay, and you've got to use you almost draw from your
Yeah.
life experience to handle that situation.
Yeah. I think it's life experience, but it's also intuition. I think it's just being
Mm,
aware that
mm.
there's a lot to be said for our heart center and our gut center, if I can call it
Yeah.
that. We've learned that from coaching, but I think just beyond coaching in
Mm,
business, when I didn't listen to my gut, that
mm,
intuition, that
mm,
something wasn't okay, there was
mm,
a price to pay. And I
mm,
think it's important to, I've learned to listen to that. I think
mm,
there were, yeah, many situations that one went through, that I went through basically,
mm,
that I felt that was almost like a guardrail, if I can call it that,
mm,
about how to navigate forward, how to um, avoid difficult situations that
mm,
could probably have ended badly,
mm.
if I didn't listen. Yeah.
Because I want to go back to what you've experienced with your wife's illness, and being so present for her and being there to support her, an incredibly professional woman who you mentioned to me is your best friend. How does Andy look after Andy during this? Because a lot of us are willing to give you that type of person who you do, but is it saying that you can't pour from an empty cup? And how do you make sure your cup is okay and your cup is full?
So that has been definitely challenging, because being a caregiver to somebody who's navigating poor health is
Mhm.
not easy, because there's that old saying that who looks after the caregiver, because
Exactly.
the
Mm,
caregiver also needs energy, and that I've had to learn. It hasn't been something that
mm,
um, I mastered in the beginning. I really struggled, um, and it's all about learning balance and learning how to um, watch my own energy levels, try and make sure that my cup is more than half full,
mm,
um, that, and things like practical things, time out from the situation at home, or
mm,
having to hire proper help at home, in
mm,
this case being a nurse, or being
mm,
a caregiver, to
mm,
spend time at home, because it's difficult. I mean, she needs personal attention,
mm,
um,
mm,
and things like doing exercise and just making sure that I remain fit,
mm,
just to deal with the stresses of life that go
mm,
with that situation. Um, it's not an easy situation to watch somebody suffer,
mm,
especially somebody who's that close to you.
mm,
It's very hard.
mm,
Um, yeah, and I think obviously my the other aspect that keeps me going is my faith.
mm,
I think that's the other side of it, um, where I feel at times replenished, sometimes helped in that situation, because it can be difficult. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, it's also a situation where, strangely so, many people can't deal with it. And that's the
Mm.
other side I've learned as well.
That's the thing, yeah.
Where, for example, my wife has experienced a lot of loneliness, because basically a lot of her friends have
Mm,
kind of left.
mm,
They can't cope with the situation,
mm.
and it's very difficult to see that happen.
Yeah.
So if anybody's going through a tough time, I would just say, please don't give up on those people. Just
Yeah.
just be there. It's important, even if it's just a phone call to them, or just
Mm,
looking to see how they are, it's really important to stay in the game.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, if that's one takeaway I can give the audience today.
Mm. Andy, I'm just watching because you and I have already discussed the technology glitches, right? And the back of your chair keeps disappearing, like my one arm every now and then because of.
Wonder why.
So I just feel that you've carried, this is just me giving you some, don't mind. You've carried a lot, and it would have been nice if someone could help you carry your wife with you, you know? A load is a lot lighter when people carry it with you. So, and not saying that your wife is a load, but she's going through stuff, and she needs that support, like you said. And a lot of people aren't
Yeah,
willing to give it. So it's had to rest on your shoulders. And I think that's what I was seeing with that. But
yeah,
yeah, resilience is definitely something that you've had to
yeah.
perfect, I
And
suppose,
resilient
or work through.
and getting up again when you get knocked down, because you do
Yeah,
get knocked down. You get knocked down
a lot. Yeah.
in terms of your energy, you get knocked down
Mm,
in terms of
mm,
your faith sometimes, your
mm,
just the trust of others sometimes, and it's just yeah, you got to get up and you got to carry on,
mm,
and it certainly is a lesson in resilience for sure. Yeah.
100%. So, Andy, I probably, because Andy and I have been, well, on a business level, I've supported him with websites and all that stuff. So I've gotten to know you as a person, and we both went through the coaching journey. So I guess I know quite a bit about you to be able to ask this question. Where does the bonsai hobby come into all of this? Because when I was asking you, like, what does Andy do for Andy? I was looking at the bonsai behind you as you were answering. I was like, oh, yeah, the bonsai. I wonder, are you still doing that? Is
That's
that still
really
part of your journey? Is it still very much in your space right now?
so about 27 years ago, getting involved in starting this new initiative as an entrepreneur and sort of getting the whole thing going with this healthcare was quite demanding and quite stressful.
Mm.
And dentistry is often called the dental mental industry because it's
Yes,
quite
I hear
stressful. A lot of
that.
doctors are
Yeah.
often stressed, and that's a lot of things.
And you hear
So
horrible
I had to
stuff.
find a way. Yeah,
Mm,
I had to find a way to
mm,
handle that and manage it. And my wife introduced me to the Eastern Bonsai Society, and I got involved with them more as a hobby.
mm,
And they started teaching me the art of bonsai, and I got
mm,
coached and mentored by a master bonsai specialist and his wife. I went for lessons for many years,
mm,
and it was wonderful. And basically, yeah, I really love trees. I think there's a wonderful metaphor just for life and
mm,
trees. I think just
mm.
roots, our trunk, our branches, just everything. There's so much there, and if sometimes things get broken, the tree somehow carries on. Um, and about resilience, and so I've been still cultivating bonsai trees, and maybe not as many as I used to. I cut back due to the fact that I used to travel so much in business.
Mm,
Um, and I used to find that when I used to travel, that things would get neglected. And even though I
mm.
had an automatic water system, somehow it wasn't done right and things would die. And always heartbreaking. So
Not
eventually I
nice.
cut back. I started cutting back. I used to have more than 150 trees at one stage. I'm now down to about 72, which I find is
A
manageable.
lot.
And I look after 72.
That's a lot.
I know people who have a thousand
It's
trees.
a lot
you
though,
know, so
72
it's
trees.
a lot.
It's like having
It's a lot.
72
Yeah.
kids.
It is like having 22 kids. And, so, so having bonsai is a wonderful
Mm,
hobby, and it's been there's a lot of life lessons
mm,
in bonsai, I think, as well, as a wonderful metaphor for life.
mm. I agree. And then poetry?
Yes, that's another thing I do. So I'm not a guy who writes a lot of poetry, but somehow when there's times in my life where I'm either at a crossroad or I'm going through I'm navigating difficult waters, for example, I will start to write. And
Mm,
that's been the strange thing about my life. I look back, I have written poems.
mm,
Some I've published online. Um, Yeah, I've been doing that for quite a while. I have a collection of poems, but it's some of them are more personal about just,
Mm, mm,
about talking to resilience and going through the difficulties of life and relying on God who doesn't let me down, who's there
mm,
to support me through some of these difficult times of life. Yeah.
100%. It just feels like we're leading naturally into the questions that I have set out here. But if you had to highlight an accomplishment that you're most proud of, I know when you've journeyed through life and the amount that you've done during your lifespan, that's to make it so specific could be difficult. But what would you say is your most
So I would say in business to have had impact on people's lives, people who
mm,
worked with me as well as customers. I think that, and just have to have left behind a legacy. Um, I know things change when you leave and retire, but just
mm,
my sense is that there's a lot out there that I'm grateful for.
mm,
Um, and having had the privilege of being able to lead that business
mm,
for that period of time. Um, I also got involved in a project that sticks to top of mind with regard to like a social, what do you call it, where a company gets involved with helping other organizations. A welfare thing, we got involved with an organization called Live Village,
okay.
based in KZN. They deal with, we had a pandemic in South Africa, as our audience might be aware, with HIV, where a lot of
Yeah.
orphans were created because they lost their parents, they lost their mother and their father. Um, and KZN was hit very bad, and a
Mm.
lot of businessmen down there
Oh,
got
awesome.
together,
Yeah. Mm.
and they created this institution called Live Village.
Mm.
And they asked for businesses to get involved, and we got involved in this village
Awesome.
by helping them with some equipment for their medical facility. Um, but their concept was basically to set up a village of mothers who would basically be foster parents to like 8 children in a small little home. And they'd set up
Mm.
a village of homes with all these orphans. They
Mm.
set up a school, set up a hospital, and it was a wonderful.
That's
I
beautiful.
really felt an honor
Mm.
to be involved in that. And having been there for the opening,
Mm.
seeing the orphans, seeing what was being
Mm.
done, was an amazing experience for me. So I think making that difference and leaving behind a legacy
Yeah.
is, yeah, that's been a milestone for me. Yeah,
Mm. That's beautiful, Andy. And that legacy is beyond just you. You've made a change,
yeah,
or, just by supporting those people's lives, and you don't know where they're going to go and what they're going to achieve in terms of their futures, which is just beautiful. Is Live Village still in operation? Are they?
they are still in operation. They're still in operation. They're on the internet if anybody wants to go and they'll
Okay.
find them. They can search on Google. They find them. They do. I think they've been expanding in a few selected places.
Okay.
It's LIV, called Live
Live
Village. But
Village.
yeah,
Mm. Well,
yeah,
my eyes lit up because my best friend, she moved to
mm,
KZN a few moons ago,
mm,
and she's got involved in these type of projects where they decide on investment. So they will go and visit, for example, a place like Live Village, see their philosophy,
mm,
see what they're doing, and then they will put together a proposal, the organization, and they will invest based on what they see
mm,
as their values and what the outcome is, so that they don't just invest in anything fly by night. They make sure that there's a positive outcome for those on the receiving end of the organizations. So I'm going to definitely tell her, but that she probably knows about them, Live Village. So I'll put that so you can put it in the comment box, or not the comment, the description box. I'll give you Andy's website as well as the details for Live Village. And Andy, your poems, you said they published online. If we can have a link to that, that would be nice, to the ones that you have
I
published.
did.
You've had so much serious stuff happen to you, and you've been really so focused on your journey and so resilient and having to keep fighting. I keep using the word fighting, but fight comes to not fighting in a negative way. When I say fighting, I mean getting up every day, even when you feel like you want to give up. Are there any funny or like silly experiences that really have made a difference in your life too? You think, yeah, that made me laugh,
Yeah,
or and I think you are that
yeah,
human
sure.
because you do interesting things. So yeah.
Yeah. A work-related one. An example would
Yeah.
be I remember being at a congress with this technology we were selling, this digital technology, and there was an interested doctor, and he was so keen to get involved, and his wife was so not keen. And the doctor made the order, and his wife went crazy. and and um, and I thought, oh boy, let's just get away from here. But
Run.
he went ahead with the purchase, and his
Mm.
wife was so angry because it meant giving up her dream home.
Yeah.
And she wanted her dream home, and he made the promise, and they've been saving the money to get this dream home. And he put it on hold. He bought the equipment, and it made a massive difference to his life, such that 18 months later, I was at another meeting or congress,
Mm.
and his wife and he were together, and she came up to apologize, and she was smiling from ear to
From ear
ear
to ear.
because they'd bought even a better home because of the technology, So, and that was just an experience where just
Mm.
believe in your product sometimes when even the wife is angry.
And you just sat there,
Yeah,
this could be interesting. You ended up
very much
making
so.
him happy and the wife, which is very important, right?
Very important.
Um, Andy, as you were saying that, this wasn't part of the question list, but I'm looking at your and
Yeah.
my screen backgrounds. Mine's a picture, it's a television, so I'm visiting places. Yours is this garden at the back there. Where's your favorite place? Like, where have you been that you think, oh, I love coming here or being here? Or
Um, I did travel a lot with work, and that I sort of the
Mm,
benefit of traveling to some amazing places. Um, I would say parts of Switzerland, really, really beautiful.
mm,
The Geneva, Lausanne area, very, very amazing area. And also Israel, another strange place. I used to be responsible for their sales in that area as well as a country manager, and very fond of the sites there and the
mm,
history and the archaeology. Um, Really amazing. I mean, it
mm,
also relates to my faith.
mm,
So that's also it makes it even a more special place, if I can call it that
mm.
as well.
And I've heard of, I've never been, I'd love to go to Israel, even Switzerland, to be honest. The mountains
Yeah.
must be magnificent. I don't know. Did you go in summer or winter? Was
I
it very
in I
green or?
went in I went in both, but
Okay.
winter can be quite special. I mean, I was taken out on a
Mm.
you put these special forget the name of them on your boots to walk in the snow.
Yes.
Not skis, but went
Like,
for a hike.
yes, like studs
Like
almost.
not they're almost like a web. It's like a netting
Oh,
around a
okay.
frame,
Okay, yeah.
and just to keep you above the snow so you don't
Actually.
sink. Because that place is yeah. And I went for a long hike with a friend.
Mm,
It was amazing, absolute amazing experience to be in
awesome.
the snow and the stillness, the quietness, just the
Mm,
quietness of the mountains, and that was
mm,
amazing,
beautiful.
amazing. So yeah, mountains are special to me. Nature is very special to me.
Mm.
I enjoy those kinds of moments. Yeah.
And I've also heard, well, Israel, like I said, that there's a presence there. There's like a spiritual atmosphere that's so tangible, you can't miss it, even if you don't believe. I've heard, that's what I've heard, so I'd love to go
I agree with
there.
you.
If you could go back and have a conversation with younger Andy, what advice would you give him? Or what would you say to him?
To try and not worry so much. I think that
Mm,
when you're going through life and its trials, some of them can be pretty daunting.
mm,
And basically to trust in a higher power.
mm,
In my case, to really have faith in God, because
mm,
I can say that He is faithful,
mm,
um, despite I'm not saying that makes you immune to difficulties, but just that
mm,
you can go through difficulties. I think
mm,
a lot of times we're looking for ways out or
mm,
ways around,
Mm,
where often the spiritual principles to go through it,
mm,
if I can call it that,
mm,
um, and to go through knowing that you're not alone, if I can say that.
mm.
Um, yeah, and that would be to be more mindful of that.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
amazing. I know you've retired, so you've had this
yes,
incredible journey of your career. And often when people retire, I hear, because I'm not at that age yet but I've heard and I've been privy to people close to me in my life who have retired, and some have found meaning in that and others haven't. So for someone that has retired out of such a incredible corporate journey, I know it's
yeah.
still early days in terms of what you're doing, but where you at? Can you talk us through that and maybe just some advice and insight?
I think retirement is quite a daunting transition. I think that's the best way
Mm,
to describe it. It's a transition from one of stability to
mm,
it can be totally unstable. It can really be
mm,
quite difficult. And we all know people in that position. Um, I I had the benefit of being close to a colleague in corporate
mm,
who went through the retirement process. I was so impressed by the way they handled it in Germany with regard to his retirement, because basically, about 2 years before retirement, they really
mm.
started the process as a company,
Yeah,
where they had social workers working with them.
amazing, Andy.
Um, they
Mm,
went through counseling, they went through building hobbies, they went through a whole phase. It was almost like a proper phase program. And as the guy got towards the end, he was ready to retire, and he walked into his own his own little hobby, and and he was kept busy and happy.
mm,
Um, and I thought I kind of think that inspired me, because I think retirement, where you just simply stop working and go live by the coast, well, it's great for some people, but I
mm,
mean,
mm,
what happens when you've done fishing every day for 2 years? I mean,
mm,
what happens after that?
mm,
So for me, I wanted to remain productive after retirement.
mm.
As long as I've got health, and that's a blessing from God,
Yeah.
um, I would like to remain productive and also contribute to people's lives in a way that can
Mm,
help them.
mm,
Um, I have all this business experience. So
mm,
about two 2.5 years before, I knew retirement was looming, because corporate policy was at 65 you will retire.
mm,
They do offer some leniency, but
mm,
being an American company, my sense was that retirement was looming.
mm, mm,
I started training part
mm.
time, the Center for Coaching in Cape Town, and basically as I got closer to retirement, I had already certified as a professional
Yeah.
coach with Center for Coaching,
Mm,
and was doing coaching part time, not for money. It was just doing coaching part time as part of
mm,
my apprenticeship, if I can call it that, my learning with the Center
mm,
for Coaching. Um, but when I'd left corporate, I was ready to basically start coaching full time,
mm,
and that's something that I've been doing the last
mm,
18 months.
mm,
Has been coaching now, and it's growing. It's not it's like starting a new business. So I almost feel like I'm back to my roots again. Here we are,
mm,
an entrepreneur starting all over again.
mm,
What I did 30 something years ago, and then
mm,
27 years ago. Um, yeah, it can be daunting. I suppose it's not for everybody, but
mm,
I do think that when we retire, we should have a plan.
mm,
Um, um, and I want to remain active. I think that's as long as I'm healthy. I think I'd like
mm,
to continue,
mm,
and I've really enjoyed the coaching journey. I've even been mentoring as well.
mm,
Been involved with an organization, international organization, the International Women's Association, doing mentoring of women in leadership, which I found incredibly rewarding and humbling. Just to see people that really
mm,
are, I think, very gifted as leaders. They have a lot to offer the world and a lot to offer corporates.
mm,
And just had that privilege of being there and walking their journey. So, yeah, I'd like to remain active for as long as I can. as long as it's physically possible. Yeah.
Andy, I think we're coming towards the end of this interview, and I think we can unpack a lot of different topics if you want to going forward. Um, what would you like to just maybe add or summarize in terms of advice or just your journey and what we can take from it, or what you would like to encourage someone listening to take from your journey that you've shared today, at least? Yeah.
I think if anyone out there is going through a difficult time, they should look for help. There is help. There are people who can help.
Mm,
Find the right help, of course. That's the other side of it, because
mm,
people that care and really listen and
mm,
want to get involved, they could be coaches, they could be counselors.
mm,
I think it's important. They all play a role in our lives, and I think it's
mm,
important to make use of that resource. Um,
mm,
um, I think don't give up if you go through a tough time.
mm,
I know that the economy has been quite rough out there this past 12 months, from what I'm hearing in most businesses. Um, and just to get up and keep going. I think it's really important not to give up. Um,
mm,
and I think if you want to go to a coach, I would recommend it, not just because I am a coach, but because I see the value of what
mm,
coaching can do in people's
mm,
lives and
mm,
the changes that it can bring about. And yeah, and I think that would be really it
mm.
from my
Awesome,
side,
Andy.
Tracy.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for those of you that are wondering how to get hold of Andy, you can go and check out his website, www.the-pathfinder, one word, .co.za. And to his point, what I recognized about coaching is that many of us need someone to listen to us, see us, hear us, that is not biased or in any part going to form an opinion based on who they think we are. When you go into a coaching scenario, you go into a safe space for the most part if you're with the right coach. Andy is one of those. And you get to talk and you get to learn more about yourself in a space where you feel held. So I would encourage you to do that. If it's business, personal, and he's had the experience across the board, you even have children. Andy, we didn't even cover that today, and grandchildren. So there's a lot you've been through, done, got the t-shirt. But thank you I'm very honored, like I said in the beginning, to have been able to interview you today. And I hope and I believe that this will be a start of many more interesting conversations and unpacking of relevant topics. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, audience, for listening to my story. Been wonderful. Tracy, thanks so much for today.
That's a pleasure.